got the engine in this, and you know, this engine has to go out because we got to basically tear this engine apart, re-gasket the thing and everything. We got a new water pump coming for it. We're going to do a whole bunch of head gaskets, or 2 head gaskets. Basically all the gaskets and seals and stuff, just because this engine is tired and they need to be replaced. But, you know, it's one big job, but it will be a lot easier taking the whole shebang out. So that's exactly what we're going to do here. Let's take this engine and transmission out, tear the whole guy apart, see exactly what makes this guy tick, put new gaskets on it, and send her back in the car. Welcome to High House Stable Garage. Alright, so first things first, we got to take off this air cleaner, see exactly what we're dealing with at the carburetor. I believe it's an Edelbrock on it, not sure what CFM or anything it is. I don't know anything that's done to this motor except what we can see as we dig into it. So we got to take the carburetor off, put our lift point on, unbolt the transmission, lines, that kind of stuff, exhaust, yank the whole guy out as one assembly, we'll break it off on the floor, and we'll go from there. Nice Edelbrock air cleaner. So after doing a little bit of research, looks like we got a Edelbrock 1405 carburetor. It's a lot like a 1406. Basically, the main difference that I can see is instead of the electronic choke, it's a mechanical choke. Mechanical choke is not hooked up on this sucker. It's just basically constantly open. Just, you know, how this guy's always driven. You've always had to pump the pedal to get it started and kind of feather it to keep her going when it's cold. And that's okay. That's all you need. And the 1406 is a really good carburetor. And the 1405 has been on this car for a long time. And it's never really gave us an issue. So, no real problem there. Kind of another neat thing. We got a XL super coil on this guy. Gets super high voltage. Don't know. Never really seen that fella before. Might just be a standard HEI. Not entirely sure. Either way, we're going to take that guy off. All that stuff. Let's get at it. All right, so carburetor should be able to come right off. Awesome. There we go. There we go. Put on our homemade lifting apparatus. That guy's pulled more engines than I think I could count. We got the engine and transmission currently out of the car, making a mess on the shop floor. And, you know, it's a, it's a sight to see, really. First time this engine's been out of here in, I don't know, 20, 22 years. All right, let's separate the engine from the transmission now. All right, take 2 bolts out. And now, we should be able to break loose this transmission. At least, you know, one would hope. Right off. Perfect. Vent line. Off you come. Separate the 2. All right, let's start unbolting the old torque converter here. All right, and now let's take out the flex plate bolt. Note to self, don't handle expensive parts up on the top when they're, you know, covered in oil. Drop the starter. Starter motors itself is okay. Absolutely totaled the solenoid. That sucks. So we need a new solenoid for this fella. Not a big deal. Not a big deal. We'll put him off to the side, but add her to the big list of parts that we need for this fella. All right, so now that we got the engine out of the car, it's time to actually start stripping this fella down. It's going to look a lot worse when I bring you guys in close, just on how it is on the before, because I sprayed everything with Pentrin oil for a couple days, so it's a little bit gooey, not going to lie. But it's actually not too bad. It has a lot of leaks, but the engine seemed to run okay, but there was an overheating issue. Water pump, radiator, something along those lines. I'm also kind of thinking blown head gasket. We're also going to be able to tell from the oil when we drop it and from the looks of that water pump and the gaskets when we get into it. So let's start tearing this sucker apart. I'm very curious to know what the oil looks like in this fella. So we're gonna pull the drain plug into this bucket here, and we're gonna see. The only thing in here is a little bit of ATF, so it's not gonna throw off any results. But we'll be able to see what this oil looks like. We're also gonna pull the filter, and then we're gonna pull the filter housing at the exact same time. Off comes the filter. Oh, yeah, look at that. We got milk. Now, we got milkshake coming out of this filter for sure, so that's great. Who knows what the inside of this guy looks like, but if that's the filter, you can only guess what's inside the pan. Yeah, milkshake. All right, let's pull that drain plug. Here we go. Let's see. And we got milkshake. Milkshake galore. Oh, that's not good. But it's what we thought at the end of the day. We thought that it had a blown head gasket, and that's a lot of water. I'm not going to lie. I'm going to let that guy drain out, right? And then I think what we're going to do, we're immediately going to flip this guy over and pull this oil pan off, because I want to see exactly what's going on our main bearings. And depending on how our main bearings look, it's going to change the course of how we approach this motor. If it's just going to be gaskets, or if we're looking at doing bearings too. Big job. Either way, I'm going to let that guy drain. I'll bring you guys back in a bit. All right, let's see what's behind door number 1. Yeah, we got milkshake all through this engine. All right, so this is kind of what we're dealing with here, as you can see. So I'm kind of feeling all the caps, all the main caps. We got none that are loose right now. So I'm hoping the bearings are going to be okay on the inside. Only one way to really tell. As for our rod bearings, there's no up and down play that I can feel as of yet, which is good. It's what we want. We don't want any up and down play at all. And so far, it seems okay. We won't really know until everything's cleaned off. You got to take that with a grain of salt, because something can look good right now, but with oil on it, don't really know. There is a little bit of scoring on the pistons. There's a little bit down there, as you can see. There's a little bit all throughout it. We're going to have to pull all the crank bearings and the main bearings, the rod bearings, all that stuff, just to check them. But most likely strip this block all the way down to the base just to make sure everything's okay. Because maybe a cam bearing's wiped out. You never really know. We'll know more when the heads are peeled off anyway. So I'm checking in here as I pull off the covers, you know. Milkshake everywhere. And we got a little bit of play here. Not a lot. Nothing worrisome as of yet. Could just be a completely closed valve, you know, that kind of stuff. Not a big concern. But on this side, we'll go from this side to this side here. Tight. Yeah. That's up and down and everything. So either like bent push rod, collapsed lifter, or destroyed lifter, or worst of the worst, cam lobe, done. Not exactly ideal. And if you come through the rest of it, you know, tight. So this guy, a little worrisome. We're going to see as we dig into this guy, but there's likely a hurt issue in here. Maybe just a little bit more than head gaskets that we're kind of thinking. But at the end of the day, fellas, that's hot rodding. You're going to have some good times, and you're going to have some really bad times. This might be one of those bad times. Let's pull the distributor, all the accessories and knickknacks before we pull this intake off, because I kind of want as much stuff out of the way as possible. I think that's a good idea. Now we kind of want to save this distributor. It's working fine, no big issues with it. We got them super stock wires on it, so we kind of want to keep him intact. Hopefully he's not Caesar saladed. Only one way to really find out. Oh yeah. Let's put a wrench on her, see what we can do. Nice big meaty adjustable on it. so we're going to admit defeat on the distributor for now. Let that guy soak for a while. Let's start taking off the intake and then the heads. There we go. Intake's off. All right, so we actually have a broken guide on this fella. As you can see, that's Baroque. So, off with the head. Let's flip him over real quick. Take a look at what's going on. All right, so preliminary report. As for the head itself is concerned, at least on the left side, I can't see anything wrong with it as of yet. It's really hard to say if there's going to be any issues with this fella. Again, it's one of those things you got to take with a grain of salt. You don't know until it's clean, fellas. So don't write her off, but don't also think that it's good, just, because you're looking at it. So that has to be clean, but he's good enough to go put on the shelf next to his rocker. All right, so the old, camera died as we were digging into this block. So far, there's a couple small issues, but we're going to save that for last of this big old Oldsmobile 403. Let's start taking off the front drive assembly, timing chain, all that stuff. Kind of want to get into the meat and potatoes of this guy, kind of really see what this water pump's doing. So let's start cracking open this pumpkin. So this is our rear main cap bearing. As you can see, the copper color is the copper layer of this bearing. It's not the worst one I've ever seen in the world. You could tell that, it was taking some debris in there, but she's pooched because I can grab that with my fingernail. See that? That guy is donezo. Really, really donezo. Now, it would be okay to run if it was all smooth and you were trying to save a buck, but I can catch my fingernail pretty darn good on that groove right there. You hear that? So this bearing right here is done. I wouldn't run this now that it's out. I likely would have ran it if it stayed inside the car, but not anymore. As for the crank, we got a little groove on the crank, but if I take the crank out, I should be able to polish that, and it should come out there fine. Rear main seal, we're going to have to take the crank completely out too. Rear main seal, we got the rope seal in there, got all that stuff. That guy, he'll be being done as we go through. So I'm just going to sit this guy back inside this fella for now. Might as well, right? Not hurting anything. And then we're just going to sit this guy just back on top, even though, he doesn't have to go on. So now we're going to take our middle out and we're going to look. Okay, so the middle, this is the one I really wanted to check because this gives you your thrust loads, as you can see. And as you can see, it's down into the copper on everything. We got copper on the sides, both sides, and in the middle. The grooves aren't nearly as bad as the rear main, and that's mostly just because it's in the middle of the engine. But, you can feel it. So he's donezo as well. And again, I'm not caring which way it goes on because these are actually arrow numbered, all that good stuff. Let's check out the front main, see how he's doing. Oof. Yeah, he's got two massive grooves in her. Crank has a little tiny bit of grooving, not too bad. But, yeah, all these bearings are likely toast. Even the rod bearings, I'm betting. That's a bet, though, at the end of the day. That's what happens, fellas, when you get water in your oil. It takes the lubricity away, and if you got any debris in there, it's going to chew through. This engine here only has about 10,000 kilometers on it. That's not a lot. Granted, it's been over 25 years, but still, only has about 10,000 clicks on it. So, what I'm going to do, I'm going to basically take these guys apart. We might as well take off all the mains, take off all the rods, pull this whole thing down, right down to the bare block. There's about, there's no reason not to at this point. So we're pull them all down. We can clean up the whole block, cylinder hone it, all that stuff. We're basically just going to throw a new set of bearings in it. I won't do cam bearings unless the camshaft is all toast, just because it's a royal pain, and it doesn't really happen often that you spin a cam bearing. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pull off all the caps, and then we can start taking off these rods as well. Yeah, it's not really a ShamWow type moment on this little fella. You can't even move your fingernail on that guy when it catches. Like, that's all the way down into the copper, and right there in the middle you can see the steel starting to get exposed. So there was some contaminants twirling their way all through inside this block here, and I'm surprised it never spun that bearing. I really, really am. And you can tell it never spun. You still got good crosshatch all inside that rod from the machine. So we're good, but we really have to throw a set of main bearings and rod bearings in this one. What I'm going to start doing, I'm going to start stacking pistons over there in order, and we're just going to have to go from there. But, yeah, we'll get new rings, because we might as well at this point, There's no point on running old rings on a brand new bearing engine. That doesn't make much sense. All right, so engine internal damage report. This is all the lists that I can find, and then I'm going to give my hypothesis on how so much water ended up in the thing. So primary damage, cylinder bores, they're all scuffed up from, water being in there. Oopsies. And likely some dirt and all that kind of good stuff. There's a couple stuck lifters, not a big deal. I can get those out. They're not stuck like I can't turn them, but they are stuck as in they won't come out the way they came. They might have to come out through the bottom. So I might have to pull the cam, that's all. So as for the cam, I can't see any problems with any of the lobes all the way through. We're going to look at pricing. We might do a cam. I honestly don't think so, though. I think we're just going to run what we have. Distributor got pooched, but that's me breaking. Pretty much every single crank bearing and rod bearing was pooched inside this 403. I care very little about them, so I just kind of threw them there on the bottom. We got heavy groovage, as you can see. Huge grooves all the way through into the copper, all that stuff, no good. The timing chain was pretty loose, not bad. We could run it if we wanted to, but I'll price it out. If we got a cheap enough one, we'll be doing that guy. And then, as for the rods, where is it here? There was one that I saw that was kind of iffy. Let's see if I can find them here. Hold on. Ah, yes, this one right here. So this fella, I saw this right there. And it took me a while to figure out, if it was a manufacturer defect or if that was a crack in the casting. And it's just a manufacturer defect, just a little bit on the surface. No big deal. I put a torch to it, whole bunch of stuff to really see the crack. It turned out okay. So that's fine. And then the only thing in the valve train that I found was this broken fella right here. It's like a rocker guide of some sort. He's snapped, so we got to get a new one of those. Now, none of those things stopped this engine from running. The old 403 just kept on ticking, but she overheated a lot. And, I got two hypotheses on why that happened. So we initially thought the water pump cooked itself, and then from there, basically popped the head gaskets, and then it just kind of pulled on over. Well, when we took the water pump off, the water pump is actually quite new on the inside. And it's a low volume pump, mind you, But the bearing play, everything, impeller, all that seems okay. Head gaskets, sometimes you can get a leak that you just don't see. I couldn't find one on the gasket side or a crack on the head side. None of that. I also checked the complete cylinder liners, or liners I should say, the complete cylinder bores, because it's a parent bore block. Nothing. I couldn't find any cracks other than those big grooves. No cracks. So as far as the block comes, if we took it right down to bare metal on everything and got it Magnaflux, that's the only way 100% for you to tell, but this block isn't even going to go see the machine shop, so we're not doing that. The heads could also have been cracked, but I looked those over. I can't see anything. Usually an oil passage will, crack to a coolant passage, or it will crack from exhaust to intake because there's not a lot of meat there, and it will crack right through. And if there's a coolant port, you can get it that way too, and it can burn coolant and all that stuff. So basically, that raises the question, how did so much water get into this engine, into the crankcase? And that brings us over to the car itself, you see. Now, it's not so much the engine's fault on why it got so much water in it, but this is my hypothesis on what happened. Trans Am specifically had an option for shaker hood. I know Challenger had shaker hood, a lot of other cars did, but a Trans Am is very well known for its shaker hood. The gasket on those shaker hoods is down. Basically, it's the lowest part of the entire hood, and it has a drain that kind of, goes out to the side. This car is stored outside, basically, in a snowbank. That's just kind of how things are. Well, this valve cover here actually, has a filter on it, and it works, pretty good for getting out the excess pressure and all that stuff. But I think it was the perfect storm of having the shaker hood basically leak water or snow, sit there, drip onto this filter, and it's not supposed to let liquids in, but if they sit there for a long, long time, eventually it will seep through the cover and go all the way down to the crank. And then, over a couple of years of that running, it eventually pooched the crank bearings out of it and the rod bearings and all that stuff. That's my current hypothesis. Now, as for it running super hot, when you get so much oil that's, not doing its lubricity job, you're going to gain a lot of friction inside that block. And I also think we were running a stuck thermostat on this fella. So, between the stuck thermostat and the high water density in the oil, I think that's what cooked this engine. Now, is it rebuildable? Yes. Are we going to rebuild it? We're going to have to wait and see if we got parts. But I'll see you guys back here very soon on basically that, depending on if we get parts or not. Culprit right there. That's your center cap. He spun inside here. As you can see, there's grooves all through it. Not good. Do the old dirty delete with the air hammer to get him out. But basically, as you can see, he was sliding all around, and then on the inside too, it's all goobered up. So it needs a set of cam bearings, and the camshaft is also pooched right here. On the back gear. Where is it? Right there. Right there. So, it needs a camshaft, lifters, all that stuff. Yippee. This old fella really is the gift that just keeps on giving, at the end of the day. It needs pretty much every single bearing. The only thing that we're really going to reuse is the crank, the rods, and the pistons, the cam, and, everything else had to be changed out. Not exactly ideal. So, we're just going to kind of clean up the block now, wire wheel and all that stuff, and then we should hopefully get some parts and start being able to rebuild this fella. It is what it is. Sometimes you open up these engines and you just find a can of worms. Oh well. It is what it is. So here's a little bit of the before on the cylinder walls. You can see, you know, we got scoring, that kind of stuff. Crosshatch is still there, but we got scoring. Not too bad of a ridge on the deck, as you can see, but there is one. So what we're going to do, we're going to run that hone through. I like the dingle ball hone a little bit. It's a lot simpler than these blade ones, but the blade one's going to do just fine. We're basically going to knock that down, put a nice crosshatch in it. That way the new rings, when we put them on our new pistons, we'll be able to seat fine. I think that's going to work out just dandy. Now you can use pretty much any type lubricant for this. Rule of thumb, use the lubricant that it's going to be going through. In this case, engine oil. We're going to be opting in for a little bit heavier of an oil, so we got a 75 W90 mix. I'm just going to put the oil on these cylinders, you know, get these guys nice and coated. We're going to coat the blades themselves on this fella. Here we go. We got these guys coated with 7590. Now what we're going to do, we're going to go through the pistons, low speed, number 1. I'm starting from the bottom. That case, in case I screw up anything, it's not going to affect my cylinder travel, not a lot, because it pretty much stops a quarter down. Overall, not bad compared to the old ones. We're going to put some more lubricant in it, and we're going to tackle it from this side this time. Get rid of that little bit of a lip on that side. Try it both ways. Should do nice. Here we go. Not too shabby for a first-timer. As you can see, there's crosshatch in her. Kind of took that lip down. The majority of it, we're not trying to re-hone this. We're not trying to remachine this guy. Just kind of take off these lips and those grooves. Grooves, no grooves. I think we're doing just fine. So we got another 3 to do on this side, and then we got another 4 to do on that side. Tons of work. And there you go, fellas. We got a nice hone and all of them. Nice crosshatch, all that stuff. The hone is not a replacement for machining at the end of the day. So you can see just a tiny, tiny hairline groove right there, but it's not even enough to catch your fingernail on. So I'm not worried about that. There's a couple of those throughout, but we got a good bed for the new rings to seat. So time to do the exact same thing on these cylinders right here. All right, so initial honing, all done up. That basically takes out the big grooves that we had inside. And now what we have to do, we got to go low speed because that was high speed. I was just trying to get rid of this little lip here on the top of each cylinder. That was my main focus. That's gone now. So now what we're going to do, we're going to lubricate it a ton, like a ton, and then low speed but fast motion in and out. That's going to give us a really good crosshatch because right now we have crosshatch, but it's more like a spiral. We want basically that fella 45'd in the entire time. So low speed, forward and back. We're going to do all 8, and it should be all done after that. Low speed, we'll put them in. About that speed, but we're going back and forth a ton at this speed. Really trying to get that really good crosshatch in it. This is what's going to seat our ring. There we go. Good stuff. Let's clean them out and let's see how we did. So, that's what we got going on this cylinder. See how all the grooves, all the little tiny scratches are basically 45'd? That's what's going to seat our rings on our pistons. If you did it just like this, you have a smooth bore, which is good, but it's no better than pretty much just how it was before. That's what seats the rings. This is just a smooth bore. The initial bit was just kind of to get that extra lip off, because I know that's not going to do anything. And it's not exactly how you're supposed to use the hone. You should have machined this block down to like the next 30 over or whatever. But budget, this will work fine. That's the crosshatch we're going for, 45 versus straight. I got a 45 all the other ones, but we're doing good progress. Let's get at it. There we go. Not too shabby, if I do say so myself. We've got a beautiful crosshatch in each one of them. They're done very well. Slow speed for crosshatch. Very fast up and down motion. Gives you a really good crosshatch every time. So, I'm happy with that. Again, we're not trying to get rid of every imperfection. You would take that to the machine shop for that, fellas. The hone isn't the answer for that. But it will make sure that your rings seat well. And that's what we're after. So, let's do the other side. Bingo bang. So that's this guy. On this side, beautiful crosshatch on all four. Very, very happy with that. Now again, I'm going to stress it again. There is marks in these cylinders. We're not going to get those out with a hone. You got to machine that to get it out. The hone is just going to touch her up. And that's pretty much it. Touch her up, add some crosshatch. That's its job. Not to rebuild the engine. Just kind of, refresh her. So, we're just going to hit it with some PB Blaster. Keep the flash rusting down for right now. And we're going to move on to our lifters. All right, so same thing. I was running, this is actually a brake cylinder hone, running that guy to clean up my lifter guides. And you know what? It's turning out pretty darn slick. It's hard to really see on camera. But we got a good crosshatch in them compared to, how these ones were looking. As you can see, there's some lines all through these, a little bit of scoring. That's cleaning them right up, and that's awesome. That way our lifter is going to turn good. It's going to have a whole bunch of oil stuck to these walls, all that good stuff. So I just got to do it to this side right here. I'll show you on the first couple, and then we'll speed through them. And that little brake cylinder hone is going to clean up all my lifters. It's going to be awesome. So we got to do all 8 of these ones. Fairly simple process. Dip my hone in some oil there. Now he's all oily. These are already blown with oil. Then I'm going to compress them, put them into my cylinder. There's a small ridge on these, so I'm going to go fast like we did on the cylinders. Super fast with this guy. Take that ridge off, and then we're going to add crosshatch. So, fast. Okay, and now I'm going to slow it right down, and we're going to do the crosshatch. There we go. Same motion as the cylinders. Fast in and out, but slow relatively on the rotate. Let's take a look. Nice and clean on both. Got a good crosshatch compared to these guys. So let's do the other 6, and then the lifters and the cylinder crosshatch is going to be all done. So for this engine block, one of the things that we kind of have to do is tap all the holes and chase all the holes. Just make sure there's no junk in it. It's kind of a long process of a step, but needs to be done to make sure that when you assemble this fella, you're not going to have any problems. Alright, so we finally got some parts in. Couple rotating assembly parts. Been waiting for cam bearings for the longest time. Finally got them. And that's what we're doing to install them. As you can see, got the cam installation tool. He's leaning somewhere. Ah, that one. I already did 3 of them. It's my first time doing cam bearings, tell you the honest truth. And, 403 Oldsmobile is what took the very first place. But so far, very, very easy to do. And basically, I'm just putting a little bit of sleeve retainer on the outside. Doesn't need it, but it is going to help out, I think. Guaranteed. And then line up your oil holes. I don't know if you'll be able to even see them. There's one. Not the most precise, but the whole entire hole isn't covered, which is good. This one, he's right on the money. And then this one, right on the money. So, can't get any better than that. I'm going to take you guys on the last 2. This is the front of the engine. You do the back first. Also learned that the cam bearings are basically shaped kind of like a cone. Makes sense, You don't think of that until you actually start installing it. And it's simple for guys that do engines all the time, but for guys that don't, when you get your cam bearings, if you mix them up, just know that it goes smallest to biggest because you can't fit the big one, right? You would have to press the bearing there, and it would get destroyed by the time you get to the very back. So they make the back one the smallest, and then it works its way to the biggest one at the front. Kind of neat. Didn't know it either way. So I'm going to take you guys on the last two, this fella and this fella. I'm going to show you guys how the tool works, how to install them right, and basically it's simple. You don't have to do cam bearings at the machine shop anymore. If you got the tool, you can do it here. Let's get at it. So again, not a step that's really needed, but if you're worried about spinning cam bearings or anything at high RPM, won't hurt it. Just know for a fact that if you put retainer compound of some kind, that's good for 700 degrees Fahrenheit, that kind of stuff. If you want to change these bearings out, you're going to have to take it all the way down to bare block. You won't be able to do it with the crank in. At least I don't think so. You have to get a torch in there and just kind of heat them up, and then they'll come out just fine after that. So what we have here, we have our cam bearing on our expansion plug. The oil hole is lined up with my slots on my expansion plug. And basically what we're going to do, we're going to slide this guy in and make sure that the oil hole is lined up with the oil gallery at the exact same time. Turn that guy. Oh, she's coming off. There we go. Into this fella. Line them up that way. And then we're just going to lightly tap this cam bearing in. Then, just to make sure that we're bottomed out, take a peek, make sure that your oil gallery is there and it's not blocked off. We're all good. So, take your tool, slide them out, and get ready for the last one. Perfect. As I said, brand new cam bearings all the way through the engine. I'm just going to clean them up with some brake clean off of a rag, not squirting direct, just some brake clean on the rag. And then from there, we're going to add a whole bunch of assembly lube onto those bearings. And then that way, when we install the cam with the assembly lube on the cam and the assembly lube on the bearings, we'll have no worries. So let me clean those guys up. I'll lube them up and I'll bring you guys back. All right, so we got the assembly lube on all the main cam bearings. So now we can move on to the crank. All right, so now it's time to install our main bearings. We already got these little fellas inside. They're just kind of hanging out, sitting out. So now what we got to do, we basically have to add the other main bearings to the mix on the caps and stuff. We already plastic gauged off our crankshaft. They're the right bearings. No issues there. So we're basically ready to install these suckers. So let's lube up the crankshaft, lube up the bearings, and we'll put them together. I think it's going to turn out some slick. All right, so we got our rope seal pretty good and pressed in there. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to trim this guy flush with the block. And there we go. We got both rope seals installed on our mains. So now, when we put the crank in, this rope seal is going to squish in. I'm going to put 2 dollops of basically silicone on both sides, and that should seal her up. These rope seals, they tend to leak less than actually a nylon seal or the newer style seals, I find. But either way, we'll work with what we got. We're going to add a whole bunch of assembly lube to our bearings. And I mean like a whole bunch. Can't really overdo it. Not going to hurt this type of old engine. Not at all. You're going to get a lot that will gush out, but that's okay. That's kind of what we want. We want to make sure that this has no non-lubrication on startup. Nice and good. So what we're going to do now, we're going to drop in our crank. Nice and easy. Lemon squeezy. Just kind of give them a shove. There we go. Okay. So now we're going to do the same thing on our main caps. Put a lot of goo. Make sure that there's no excuse. This guy's not going to run dry on us. So what we're first going to do is work our way out from the center, and we're going to do 30 foot-pounds just at the very beginning. Nothing crazy. So now we're going to go to 80 for all, and then we're going to do 120 on the rear main. Fellas, we got the crank in. It's all specced out. I was having a little bit of binding issue down at the bottom right here. Basically, that rope seal kept, screwing me over. Basically, it wasn't all the way in. Put that all the way in. Now it rotates pretty darn good. So now we got to move on to the rods and the rings. So just in case some of you guys were wondering on rings, the rings that we have, they're just standard bore sizing, as you can see. There and there. Nothing too drastic about them. So basically, we don't have to touch these guys if we don't want to. We could file them down right now, but we got no plans for boost or anything like that. So I think that's going to work out just fine for this fella, because that's the stock ring, the original one. This is our replacement. Works out pretty darn slick. So what I'm going to do, I got to change all the rings on all the pistons. I'll do that off camera. And then I'll bring you guys back in when we're, putting the rings and the pistons and all that stuff in here. All right, so there's a lot of repetitive on building an engine. In this case, you got 8 pistons, 8 sets of rings, 8 sets of, rod bearings, all that stuff. So what we have to do here, I'm going to take you guys along on the last one. I already got all the other ones set up. And, my old engine stand is a hurting unit. So, after we get this last piston in, I'm going to have to address that. But either way, let's take a look at this fella. So these are my new rings right here. We're going to put them on the block. This is my old rings. You can use a ring set plier, stuff like that, if you really want to, but you don't need to. You can just, take the old ones off by hand. All right, so now we're ready for installation. Start with your girdle spring and put him on. I'm not going to use any ring pliers for this installation. Then you have 2 really thin rings. Really thin. They just kind of hold that girdle spring up together. They're like your scraper rings. So, I'm going to slide him on. Put one end in first. Work the other one in. Be careful because the rings are quite brittle. Not so much the scraper ring, but the other ones, yes. Yes, they are. Come up from the bottom here. Slide him on. There we go. So the scraper rings are all set. Next, we're going to put on our first compression ring. He's this black one right here. Slide him on. Same idea. Get him started in his ring, which is the bottom one. And then you can pull them apart and slide them over the piston. And there we go. So he's on. Now we can do our top ring. This is our main compression ring. Put him on. Same idea. Spread it, put him on. There you go. You don't have to, but it makes it a lot easier to start. Put your 2 gaps on both sides, 120 degrees away from each other. And there you go. You got an assembled piston. So now what we're going to do, we're going to put our compression sleeve on. This guy right here. He's going to let us install this piston right from the bottom. Little Allen key on it. Give her a twist. Open her up just like so. Put him on the piston. And then same thing. Tighten it down. Tighten it down until you can't anymore. That's going to compress everything. And there we go. We got him all set. So I'm going to flip him over. I like to install my bearing right now just because it's a lot, easier than trying to fish it up inside the engine. So we can put our bearing on, put some white grease on our bearing surface, white lithium grease. Give him a wipe down. There we go. Put a little bit on the crank. There we go. Good stuff. Now, this only goes in one way. And based off all the other ones, you got a flat, on this side, you got to flatten the nub. We're going flat to flat. So the flat with the nub is pointed on that side. So we're going to slide him up under, just like so. Line him up with the crank the best we can. And then we're going to take our hammer handle and we're just going to massage him into the block. There we go. So now we're going to clean up our cap, put our last bearing on, just like so. Put the white goo, and we'll put our bolts. And for now, we're just going to torque it to 20 foot-pounds. All right, so we got the timing chain on, all that stuff. All the pistons are in, and we got the oil pump on. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to put the timing cover on, and then I'll see you guys here at the oil pan. So we got the timing cover started, 4 bolts there. Let's move on to the oil pan, and then from the oil pan, then we can work our way down on the short block. But let's get the oil pan done up first. Nice and easy. It gets rid of a lot of bolts that are on the floor. Anyway, let's get the oil pan, put it on, put the gasket, all that good stuff. All right, so what we're going to do here now is start assembly of our lifters. These are hydraulic flat tappet. You can soak these overnight if you want in a bucket of like 75, 90, something like that. We're electing not to because we're just going to prime the oil system before we run the engine anyway. So this is the stuff that came with the cam. We're going to put that on the wear surface. Want that nice and ooey gooey. And then for the sides, we're going to use our white grease. Here we go. And slide them in to one of the bores. And slide them in to one of the bores. Perfect. We're just going to repeat that all the way down through until every lifter is basically in its bore. All right, so now that we got the heads on, we can put our push rods in and assemble our valve train. All right, so we got pretty much the long block assembled, minus the intake. I got the rockers on, and as you can see, got a couple that are loose, and that's okay. This is a hydraulic flat tappet cam. The hydraulic lifters are not pumped up right now. They are flat all the way down. So a little bit of play, that's fine. Once we pump these up, the play should go away or be next to zero, pretty much. In order to do that, we have to basically put in the old distributor parts, run a drill off them, and it'll pump up the entire system. So what we're going to do, I got a nice concoction of good stuff over there. We're just going to pour down the valley pan here, drain into the intake, and then from there, we should be able to put our filter assembly on and cap off a couple oil plugs, and then basically pump this guy until oil starts to come out of these push rods. Once the oil comes out of all the push rods, your lifters are going to be all pumped up. All right, so now that we got the oil filter on, got it down here. You guys don't see it, but I'll show you guys in a second. Don't worry. We got the oil pump shaft inside the engine, and we got most of the spots plugged up. I can see an oil port right there for the oil gauge that I never plugged up yet, but that's okay. But this is the recipe for success that we're going to be giving this engine. We got a Lucas TB Zinc Plus. Is it going to keep that flat tappet cam super happy, hopefully, hopefully. During the break-in period, normally I wouldn't add this, because the 1540 diesel oil usually suffices. But break-in, it's a good idea to, throw her in. Then, we got the old bargain bin, Napa 1540. Shell Rotella would work too. This was just on sale. Same idea. Same vitamins and dinosaurs. And then we have Lucas heavy-duty oil stabilizer. So the idea that we're going to do, this wants the whole bottle. We got to put all of that in that guy, no matter what. We're likely going to add half a quart of the oil stabilizer directly into the engine, and then we'll top up the rest with 1540. That should give it the fighting chance it needs to keep that cam going. New cams these days are hit and miss. You can tell from, DD Speed Shop, Vice Grip Garage, Uncle Tony, they've all had their fair share of, cam failures, especially from, the COMPs. But I digress. Either way, we're going to give it a fighting chance because we want to keep that lift that we bought in the cam and, you know, not in the pan. So what we're going to do for this guy, we're just going to shake him up pretty good. But most of the oil is going to settle down at the pan anyway. So that's not a big deal. So he's all shaken up. So all we're going to do for this guy is we're going to dump him right into the valley. And it's going to make its way down to the bottom of the engine. Just dump them right in. So now we're going to add about half a quart of heavy duty oil stabilizer to it. This is that motor honey, you know, all that good stuff. Really give them a fighting chance that this engine so desires. Give them a splash of 1540 conventional. That's likely fine, at least for now until we prime the system. So that's going to work its way down. Give it some time. So what we're going to do now, my fair feathered friends, I'm going to hook up the oil pump drive to this guy, and we're going to pump him and wait for that oil to come out the ends. Simple as that. All right, so we got old trusty, you know, the old bargain bin drill. I have the old distributor that we shaved the gear down off, and now we just have the drive pin. So I'm just going to ram jam him down in here. And we're going to pump and pump. Oh, you know, we're going to have to block that off. We found the first leak. There, I just kind of, you know, put the oil sensor back on her. So let's drive that sucker again, and let's just, you know, wait and see what happens. Should get oil out of these guys eventually. Oh, we're starting to see movement. Kind of silly, really. So what we're going to do, we're just going to keep pumping until we see oil out of all these push rods. So we got updates, you know. We're waiting on push rods and a distributor because, you know, the distributor that I thought I had has a different oil pump primer. It, you know, where it engages the oil pump won't work. It's a 350 Chevy distributor, newer style. Needs an Allen head basically for the end. So that's not going to work. So we're waiting on a distributor. Push rods too small. After pumping the system, they never fluffed up the way I wanted them to. They never took up. We went with a pretty aggressive cam. It was a 235 lift in this before stock cam. Now it's a 515. So quite a drastic jump. I didn't know where the cutoff was for a stock valve train, but, you know, I guess we found it. So it needs new push rods, new lengthened push rods. We're getting a checker brought in, and then I can adjust those down the road. That's going to take some time. So I wasn't going to paint this guy, but we're sitting on a little bit of time here. So what I'm going to do, I already masked him off. I already degreased it. We're basically just going to lay some Rust-Oleum blue just over top. It's not engine paint, nothing crazy. If it flakes off, it flakes off, but it will give us one nice solid base to move forward. So we're going with pretty much the same color that it was, and it might even have been Rust-Oleum blue at the very beginning. So, not a big deal. Let's basically, I'm just going to mix that up. I'm going to put it inside my HVLP gun, my electric one. This is what we did the bed of the shorty with. And you know, it lays her on thick. But, It works really good for frames, and I think it's going to turn out pretty good for engines. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to put her in that, going to spray her down. Should work out pretty darn slick. All right, so we got our paint sprayer all set up. Let's start going to town. There you go, fellas. One baby blue engine. And you know what? It's the exact same shade that the Olds 403 was inside the Trans Am anyway. So I think we're doing pretty darn slick. Granted, this engine was rebuilt like 22 years ago. So likely wasn't the original paint. They likely used Rust-Oleum too. But it turned out all right for this old engine. Okay, guys, we're playing the waiting game again. You know, waiting on push rods, waiting on a distributor. That way we can finish the assembly of this guy and stab him back into the car. Kind of how things go. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, and sometimes you wait. In this case, we're waiting. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Part 2, we should have this engine completely all done, running it, and then we're going to stab it into the car. Awesome. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you guys in the next one really, really soon. All right.